Well, hello, 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 everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are here tonight to talk about an amazing film that just came out last week. But before that, welcome to Nom Watch Review. That's right, that's what the show is called, part of Nom Talk Network. On this show, we review the latest film drop or a throwback celebrating a milestone while eating and drinking our favorite movie snacks and drinks. So my name is Jordyn Orozco. For those of you who haven't frequented us or been on Nom Talk, I've done a couple of things on this channel. And right now I'm simply just drinking a lovely, wonderful Belgian white Blue Moon because it's wonderful. But earlier I had some steak and some truffled mac and cheese, so that was really good. Now I would like to introduce our guests for the evening, the lovely and wonderful people you see here on screen. So let's start with Jefferson. What's going on, man?
Hey, what up? Yeah, I'm Jefferson. I got invited here by Stephanie, one of your people, your producers. Yeah, we both work at G4, and so it was like an easy scoop. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, it's good to see you. And then I'm just gonna go next to Whitney since you're on the bottom. What's going on, Whitney?
Hey, how's it good, guys? I'm Whitney. I'm from Fans Cooking Fiction, so I do a lot of themed cooking and baking. And I'm always excited to be a part of the review process and talking all things nerdy and film themed.
Most definitely. Well, welcome. And then there's a mysterious person on this stream tonight. I don't know who this person is. Sir, can you Oh, it's Kenji. Hi.
I am the Kenjinator. You can call me Kenji. It's great to be back. I was here last time with the Uncharted review. I had a great time and just wanted to be back. Great to be back.
And then
I haven't seen this dude in a while. We cosplay a lot, and I haven't seen this dude in a while. But
yes,
yeah,
I go way back. Yeah, I was so stoked to find out. Like, she gave when Stephanie sent me the itinerary, saying like, "Oh, these are going to be the guests today," and I saw Jefferson's name. I was like, "Yeah!" I was so stoked.
That's great. We're just bringing people together on Zoom to do Not Much review, so it's great. And then we'll start with Kenji. What are you having tonight? Are you having anything special?
Tonight it's the plain old water for me. Drinking. You gotta stay hydrated. You know how it is.
Absolutely.
But I might dabble in this bottle of scotch later. Who knows?
Oh well. Excuse me. And then Whitney, are we enjoying anything tonight, or are we just?
Yeah, I'm having some coffee. I've drank most of it, but I had some pan dulce with it earlier too. So like Mexican sweetbread.
Oh, that sounds yummy. And then Jefferson, what's for dinner?
What's for dinner? I'm just having a snack first. I'll have dinner later, but I'm having like pretz, if you know what that is. Wait.
I don't.
It's green.
Oh, there we go.
It's green.
Pretz. There we go. Yeah. It's like Pocky, but it's naked and tastes like pizza. Yeah.
Oh.
Same makers as Pocky. So
that sounds
it's in the same family.
It's like savory instead of sweet. Maybe they should do like a Pocky Pretz collab. That would be weird, but also kind of good.
Yeah, right. They're already in the same like neighborhood, so they might as well at some point.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we all here for, right? Obviously, we're here to talk about the Batman, right?
The Batman.
Yes, the Batman, not the Batman, but the Batman. Which stars our wonderful Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Jeffrey Wright, Colin Farrell, Paul Dano, Andy Serkis, John Turturro. So for me, this film, I think, heading up to it, I wasn't really expecting a lot because the people that they have in it, I was like, I don't know. And then you see the trailers, and obviously you just get a snippet, a snapshot, and I wasn't, getting up to the film, I was just like, oh, do I really want to go see it? Do I want to go back to the movies just to see, all that stuff? But I will say I was fairly surprised with this film and coming out of it and being like, wow, like I actually enjoyed that ride more than I thought, right? It's like when you get on a ride that you're like, you've never been on, but you're like, I'm scared, I don't know what to do. And then you get off and you're like, oh, that was actually quite pleasant. How did you all feel? Let's start with Jefferson. What were you feeling coming up to the film?
Coming up to the movie, let's see. I think like the lead up to it, I was going in with like mid expectations. Like I already knew going in that it was going to be good because Matt Reeves hasn't really made a bad movie. Like I loved Cloverfield. That was one of my favorite like monster movies. And so like I was going in with that expectation that it was going to be at least good. But yeah, no, that blew my expectations like way out there. Like I God, like that was do you want to say our like what we overall think of it now or later?
Yeah, I think we'll just go like we'll start with preliminary. Like, so what were you feeling
Okay.
up to the
Yeah.
movie, and then yeah, we can
The
delve right
casting of
into it.
Robert Pattinson was first it was a shock, and then I was like, you know what? We can't just judge a guy by just one franchise. Like
Sure.
I think going in there were too many jokes about Twilight, but he's a very underrated versatile actor. Like
Absolutely.
it took until Lighthouse for me to go like, okay, no, I have faith in this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Kenji, I know you were just sort of mentioning stuff. So how are you feeling up to the movie? What were your thoughts, feelings?
So like I was kind of in the same boat with Jefferson. Like I went into it kind of knowing that the movie was going to be fairly good, and and anybody who was saying that Robert Pattinson, oh Twilight this, like I was 100% behind him the second he got cast, because like he's done in Metropolis he's basically Bruce Wayne, and I actually saw Little Ashes, which was like one of his older like smaller films that he did where he plays Salvador Dali, and he did an amazing performance, and completely underrated. He really puts himself into a role, so I knew it was going to be we were going to get a good performance out of him for sure. And I thought Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle was a great pick, and Colin Farrell, freaking chameleon that he is, he looked great in the trailer, so I knew that I was going to be fairly entertained.
Great, yeah. And then Whitney, what were your thoughts coming up to the movie?
Yeah, so I'm a huge Batman nerd, so I was pretty excited at the idea of a new Batman movie. But at first, I initially was kind of like, oh, it's kind of a random casting choice for Robert Pattinson. But I'm like, you know what? Like, let's do this. I'm looking forward to it. You know what I mean? And then Zoe Kravitz, I absolutely love her. So I'm like, that's going to be dope. I was like, okay, I see the chemistry. I see where this is going. So I started getting even more excited towards like the previous month, So I was like, okay, it's coming up now. And I started doing like a lot of theming stuff with it, and like just kind of rewatching a lot of my favorite Batman films, and just kind of excited.
Yeah, I think too, for me, like coming up to it, like my experiences with obviously Batman is just going to be, things that I've read sparsely from the comics, and then things that I've experienced with the other movies, right? Like my first Batman ever exposure, it wasn't Adam West, it was Michael Keaton, right? Like that was my first experience with that, and it was with Jack Nicholson, and it was with Danny DeVito playing the Penguin. So I just remember my dad showing me that at a very young age, and it's very campy because it's Tim Burton, and so it's like it's very just and so that was my first experience. And then once sort of like the Dark Knight trilogy came out, that's when I sort of started getting involved in that, and then I became obsessed with the Arkham Knight game trilogy, or the Arkham. So like, which is why that's my background, because it's my favorite. Arkham City was my favorite game of all time, like for Batman, period.
Yeah.
And so like going into this, I was like, it was like, I don't want to say high expectations, but I wanted to say no expectations, because I didn't want to necessarily I didn't want to be disappointed. Right. And then coming out of it, I wasn't, right. Like you're not, I was just mesmerized by everybody's performance, everybody's sort of way that they, have done that. So I know here at Nom Watch Review, we do ratings based off of popcorn buckets. So 1 to 5 buckets, depending on what you want. So let's start with Whitney. What would you give this movie just right off the bat from seeing it?
Yeah, I would actually give it 4 popcorn buckets.
Nice.
I left very excited. Like I genuinely was like, that was freaking amazing. Like I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then Kenji, what would you give it?
I give it a 4 out of 5, just because we're not allowed to give half ratings. Like, like actually half ratings down is why I would want to do it. But, I'm giving it, I'm gonna be a nice teacher, and I'm gonna round up and give it 4 popcorns.
You go on a curve.
Yeah, I just thought, you're just barely passing the grade. No, I'm kidding. It was a great. Actually, I actually really liked the film. It was one of the, but like as much as I liked it, I wanted to love it. I wanted to love it so badly, but I can only settle for really liking it.
Sure. And then Jefferson, what would you rate?
On my personal rating scale, I gave it 4.5 dinosaurs. But since I'm over here at the Food Network at Nom Talk, yeah, 4. It's also a 4 for me for 4 popcorns out of 5. I thought that it was damn near perfect. Like this was the closest we got to a not for shot, but like a 1-to-1 representation of Batman. Like they killed it and they knocked it out of the park. I'm not gonna lie. It's even if you're not a Batman fan, it's a great neo-noir movie too.
Yeah, and so I also gave it a 4 out of 5. I think for me, like coming out and first reactions, I was like, it's 5, but then it's definitely not on par with, for me, like The Dark Knight was. So it's not like up there to me, but I think going in with no expectations and then coming out pleasantly surprised and actually enjoying the whole ride, I for sure would do 4 out of 5. And then let's just go right into it. So let's talk about the story first of all. So okay, I know we're already doing spoilers and shit, but just letting everybody know this is spoilers. So if you're watching this it's gonna happen. It's happening.
You've been warned.
Yeah, you're right. The night is dark and full of spoilers.
You know what? As you start, I'm just gonna get my pizza from the microwave real quick.
Yeah. So I was definitely shocked and amazed, and I honestly feel like there was no wrong casting in this movie at all. Like I feel like everybody fit their role, even though. And I also felt like this movie was more realistic in a way where it sort of demystified Batman for me, where it was like you think Batman's this like superhero with these superpowers, right? But this one, it was more real, right? Like Selena Kyle was a human, was a thief, right? She didn't really have like that Michelle Pfeiffer vibe where it was like supernatural and like got brought back by a cat. She was just a human, right? But she was a thief and she was a trained thief, right? And so for those of you that don't know, now that Jefferson's back, the story basically is Bruce Wayne, the Batman. And I feel like this is a little bit like past an origin story, but like before everything, right? Like before he even knows who the Joker is, right? Before he even knows who any of these people are.
We got confirmation that it's year 2, but he has to be the Joker because Joker's in jail.
So yeah, that's true. I mean, but the main villain's Enigma, right? Or is whatever Northman or whatever his last name was. But
Nash.
Yeah. I was like,
well, I guess Enigma was too on the nose and too cheesy for them.
Yeah.
Well, I think there is actually it's based on one of the comic stories for one of the Riddler origin stories that they have, where he's just an accountant named Edward Nash who just figured out that Batman was Bruce Wayne one day. He just happened to figure it out.
Right.
This is like what was the thing that they did? It's like Earth, the new Earth 20, Earth something.
Earth 2.
One? Like where it's like
is
there's
it Earth
things
1?
that are just probably.
Yeah.
Where things are just, I think this is the way that Matt Reeves wanted to go. So the story basically is the Riddler's out killing people that are of high status. So the commissioner, the DA, right? He's killing them because they're corrupt. And Batman is left to figure out all the clues that the Riddler's leaving him. And so as the story progresses, Selena Kyle gets introduced because one of her friends gets kidnapped, and it's just this whole thing. So what did we think about the story? I feel like the entire time it was fluid. I feel like there wasn't like an area where I was like, I'm confused for a minute. Like, where did we go? Because Selena Kyle's story and Bruce Wayne's story were two completely separate arcs in that movie. But for some reason, I wasn't confused the entire time, right? How did we feel about the story? Let's start with Kenji.
There was I mean, first of all, I thought Paul Dano as the Riddler was great. I thought that a lot of the expositional things that they were doing was really well. Like the scene with the funeral, I thought was probably one of the best written expositional dumps in cinema. Like it's probably probably the best scene in the entire film. But I felt a lot of, I liked the story. There were some moments where I felt were a little bit like, because like, for instance, when you get El Ratada, he says, "Oh, it's a rat with wings." He goes, "Oh, obviously I'm thinking penguin or a falcon or stool pigeon." I'm like, hold on, you got stool pigeon before you thought bat?
Legit.
Are you freaking kidding me? Like, there are two things I think of when I think rat with wings. It's seagulls and bats. Those are the two that I think of. So like, I was just really surprised. Like, but with that said, though, I didn't think I wanted to see more of that relationship between Alfred and Bruce. I thought it was touched on. Her, first of all, how dare you just make Andy Serkis nothing more than a, beautified cameo. That man is a brilliant actor. How dare you?
He is.
But like, with that being said, though, I felt like, the story was very grounded. It was a much grounded storyline. Definitely realistic for sure. I thought Batman, like I said, Robert Pattinson's Batman was phenomenal. But with that said, I wish I saw a little bit more of a difference between Bruce and Batman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's fair. Jefferson, how did you feel about the story? What were some things and thoughts you were?
That was my beef too. The disconnect between Batman and Bruce Wayne wasn't there, and at first I was bothered by it, but like after like really getting into it and a second viewing, I kind of buy it, because like I guess it's like this Bruce is still too young and he doesn't know how to hide under the veil of Bruce Wayne yet. He doesn't know how to like act like a playboy rich guy yet. He just knows how to be Batman, and that's it. That being said, there are interactions in the movie where they're like, "Oh shit, it's Bruce Wayne," and Bruce Wayne's just like, "Yeah." It's like, how can you not tell this guy's Batman? Like, what?
Yeah.
He moves and acts the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Whitney, how did you feel about the story?
I really enjoyed it. Like, it was dark, it was gritty, and it was really interesting to see him in year 2. So he wasn't as polished. Like, even, he didn't always land his landings. Yep. And that was kind of cool to see him sort of kind of like learning to sort of become Batman. And I just really enjoyed it. And it was cool that it was more of a thriller. And even some parts were very reminiscent of a horror film, like the score even. I loved the score. And it definitely gave me Imperial March vibes. I don't know if anyone caught that, but anytime his theme came up, I was like, that's very reminiscent of Imperial March. And the score and the theme and the aesthetic, I actually thoroughly enjoyed it, and the story too.
Yeah, I was, that was the thing that I came in expecting, was like, people were like, oh, it's going to be a little scary. And there were like, I think it was in the very beginning of the film. When the Riddler was hiding in the, I think it was the mayor at the time, in his house, and you just see his shadow. And I was like, oh shit. But then when he attacked him, I jumped because it was like a jump scare. And I was like, I don't expect this in a Batman movie. And then like there were some like following that in the movie, where it felt more thrilling and more like heart pumping for me. Like there was a couple times when like my watch on my wrist was like, your beats went up, or for like your heart rate is like going, and I was like, calm down, I'm watching a movie, right?
Some of those jump scares were from Batman himself.
Yeah, like him coming out of the shadows, like that whole opening scene, I actually thought was really dope. Seeing like the whole monologue and seeing all the crime happening, and then the criminals seeing like the possibility of Batman being out, and just kind of being more afraid of that than police itself was kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
I think that I think for what it was and the way that it sort of flowed with that sort of aspect, I think they did a really great job. Matt Reeves did a really great job. really sort of, I would say, like humanizing the Batman, because he's a human, right? Like, yeah, he's a hero, vigilante, right? But he's a human where like we all go through those like emotions and all that stuff. And I think it was really, I mean, you can't do this without, you can't not mention his parents without making a Batman movie. But I think the way that they did this one was very well done. I think it was like, oh yeah, Bruce Wayne's, because everybody knows Bruce Wayne's parents. They were philanthropists. They did all this stuff. But this one sort of, again, demystified that for me, where it was like, oh, they're also human and they also do things that might, where they mess up. Let's go straight into casting, because this is something that I've been excited to talk about all day. Let's talk about, I know we've sort of briefly mentioned it, Robert Pattinson as the Batman, right? I think you all have sort of hit the nail on the head. I have always liked Robert Pattinson, obviously because I had a huge Twilight obsession when I was like that age and it came out, but he's also a versatile actor, and not a lot of people know that. I think, Kenji, you said Little Ashes was something that I saw that and I was like, he's phenomenal. Lighthouse was great too, right? I was just a little hesitant because I'm like, he doesn't necessarily ring out Bruce Wayne for me, but I think this Bruce Wayne fit. I think it fit him perfectly well. How do we all feel about Robert Pattinson? I know Kenji and Jefferson have sort of mentioned it. Whitney, we'll start with you. How did you feel about Rob Pat doing the Batman?
Like, I mean, I love Robert Pattinson. It's funny, back in 2008, I lived in the same apartment building as he did. It was like right when Twilight came out. And yeah, and I remember bumping into him and being like, hey, that's the guy that plays Cedric Diggory. Because this was before, the Twilight films that come out.
Boy!
Yes,
You should have said that. That would have made.
Could you imagine? And it was funny because I was actually reading the Twilight books and I knew he had been cast and, the movie hadn't been released yet. So I think he was in LA and it was more about promotion. But like we lived in that same building. So I thought I've always had this like weird connection where I'm like, I know who he is. He's so cool.
I know where he sleeps.
I know where he sleeps. No.
Gently leave your own hair on his pillowcase, so
could you imagine?
Oh, wow. Sleep on this.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've actually, I'm a fan of his, and I just thought it was kind of like initially, like I thought it was a random casting choice for Batman. I would have never thought like, oh, Batman, Robert Pattinson. But I wasn't against it. I was like, I'm kind of curious. This will be kind of cool to see. So I'm a big fan.
Sure. And then Kenji, Jefferson, did you want to add anything? I know you all have sort of mentioned that, he was all right. If not, we can look. I'm ready to talk about. No, go ahead, Jefferson.
I just hope that like after seeing this, people like comic book fans that only watch comic book movies will like go to watch his other movies and be like, oh, I guess I was wrong, or that surprised me, or something. Like, it's
definitely. I am 100%. I'm right there with Jefferson. Like, because I feel like a lot of people wrote him off because of the fact that because he is the glittery boy from Twilight. So I feel like this kind of, I mean, obviously he's done phenomenal performances with, with Lighthouse and stuff. But, I feel like a lot of people who did see that probably didn't go see it because of Robert Pattinson. They probably went to go see it because of Willem Dafoe. So like, so those people were like slightly, were like genuinely probably surprised with that performance that he gave. So I feel like, like he knocks it out of the park as Batman. As Batman, I think he does a phenomenal job. And I really hope that this will give him like an opportunity for for people to start seeing his other films, because he's got a deep catalog besides Twilight. And I feel like it's worth looking at.
He was in Good Time, right? Good Time? That was him?
Good Time?
I haven't seen that.
Time?
I don't know. I haven't even heard of it.
Never mind.
How do we feel about Zoe Kravitz? So this is where I had some of my reservations, but I feel like they worked. I feel like it was less of a Catwoman and more of a Selena Kyle, right? Where she's also she's already had this thief persona, right? But she's not the Catwoman yet, right? And it's sort of like an in-between for Selena Kyle. And then you know, the whole relationship with Falcone and her being like her dad and like all this other stuff. It was just very, I feel like the casting for Zoe and Selena Kyle was perfect. I kind of feel the same way, right? Where I feel like there could have been a little bit more Catwoman-y things that she could have done, like the mention, like her drinking milk, right? Fine. Her having 8 million cats in her house, that's fine. But I think there could have also been a lot more reference to sort of like a Catwoman-y feel for the character. But I feel like it worked for this type of film. What do you think about Zoe Kravitz? Let's start with Kenji.
I actually thought Zoe Kravitz was phenomenal as Selena Kyle, and I'm looking at her as Selena Kyle, not as Catwoman, because I feel like that's because the thing about Catwoman is that she doesn't have to have that juxtaposition, that dichotomy, like, oh, I am one person this one moment, but then the second I put on the suit, I'm another person. Like, she is that through and through. So because of that, like, she gets to be herself. I love the character design that they gave her with like the shorter hair, and she gets all these different wig looks. I thought she physically embodied the role really well. I'm sure they had like stunt doubles doing some of those like climbing scenes, but I think she physically, like during the fight scenes, I think she did a phenomenal job. And she's for someone, I think she just did a great job. I honestly, like, I want to see more work of hers. Like, and that's also another actress who has a really deep catalog that I feel everybody should see.
Yeah, I feel like she was the right pick for that specific Selena Kyle or that specific Catwoman. Yeah, and then Jefferson, what did you think? Did you think she did Selena Kyle justice?
I not only thought she did her justice, it made me realize, damn, Anne Hathaway was not great as Catwoman.
Yes.
I was team Anne Hathaway because I had a celebrity crush on her, but now I'm like, you know what? Bias aside, rose-tinted glasses aside, she was not great as Selena. Zoe killed it. She really did.
Yeah, I agree. And Whitney, do you have any thoughts on Zoe?
Yeah, I absolutely loved her. I thought she was fantastic. She has that vulnerability and that toughness, and she just has a great screen presence. And I think she definitely captured Selena Kyle. I loved her every second. I was always excited to see her on the screen.
Yeah, I felt that way too. I was like, I want to see more. Like, I want to, and then when she came on, I was like, oh, what's going on now? And then because it was like I was getting tired of the emo Rob Pattinson Bruce Wayne thing, and then she came on, and I was like, okay, great, it's gonna get good. So I want to specifically talk about Colin Farrell. I briefly forgot before I went into the theater that he was in this movie. So I'm watching it thinking that Cobblepot, aka Oz or the Penguin, was being played by some random dude. And I was like, clicked on me when I was like driving home. I was like, that was Colin Farrell. They did such a good job at not making him look like Colin Farrell. But how did we feel like the Penguin, like an early Penguin? What did we all think about that, Kenji? How did you feel about Colin Farrell?
First of all, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, who's playing the Penguin? Because what's weird is that you see him and you go, I think it's this actor, and then you go look it up and it's not who you think it is. And I was like, oh my God, it's Colin Farrell. And I went into the movie knowing that it's Colin Farrell, and I was still watching it going, oh fuck, that's Colin Farrell. like it's such a trip. Like, I mean, my girlfriend, we went to go see it together, and even she was like, who was Colin Farrell in that movie? And we're like, it was Penguin. And she was like, no way.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, that's the thing about Colin Farrell, is that he really likes, lately I feel like he really gets into his roles, like Horrible Bosses, like, and now with Cobblepot, like he's putting on this character, and he's just does such a great job. And I really want to see more of Colin Farrell doing wild and wacky characters like this, because he really dives deep into it. He's like, we didn't, like, half of us forgot he was there, not because he's not good, because he's phenomenal.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And then Jefferson, what did you think of Colin Farrell's Penguin?
I think the same reaction that we had for Colin Farrell as Penguin was kind of like my reaction to when I found out Tom Cruise was in Tropic Thunder. If you all saw Tropic Thunder, like I was like watching the Tropic Thunder, like, huh, Tom Cruise in this movie somewhere. I don't know where though, but he's somewhere here. And I guess it's like a testament to like how much like makeup and special effects have advanced since 2008. Like I don't know how much of that was like just prosthetics and how much was CG. Was it all prosthetics? Do we know for a fact?
I mean,
think it was all prosthetics.
I was like, this is really freaking awesome. And he nailed that. I wanted to see more of him even, like I was hoping for more Penguin stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think we're all conditioned to, that Cobblepot and the Penguin is very much a boisterously loud, like, got this accent, like I'm the Penguin, right? And like just and then Danny DeVito and his wonderful work that he did on Penguin. But then you kind of get like this Colin Farrell where it's like I feel like most of these people, they were just starting out, right? Like they're just getting their reputations, right? Like they're just starting to do all this stuff. And I think he did a really good job with the part. I want to talk about the Riddler. I want to talk about this was a Riddler. So that was another thing that off the trailer that I was like, I'm not sure if this is going to work for me because I'm used to seeing the Riddler as this like boisterous, like just you're going to solve this, right? And like from the Arkham City games, he's just he's crazy, but he's also like this skinny, like white dude who wears like question mark shirts. And he's like, you have to solve my riddles around and you have to get all this stuff. But this guy was a homicidal maniac. Like it literally put the Riddler in a whole new light for me. Like he was a terror, like he was a terrorist, right? And then he gets exposed and you're like, oh, he's this like little like dude, like he's this little like wait, this guy with glasses is just, but he's insane in what he does, I thought his casting was just absolutely phenomenal. Jefferson, what did you think about the Riddler?
Can anyone tell me where he came from? Because I actually have never seen a Paul Dano movie.
You haven't seen Paul Dano movies? Oh my god!
Where is he from?
No Country for Old Men. No. There Will Be Blood.
There will be blood.
Right. Okay.
Little Miss Sunshine.
He was also in that Beach Boys movie. I forgot what it was called, but he plays the young lead singer from the Beach Boys. I'm drawing a blank on the movie, but
Didn't see that. Is he mostly from TV?
I don't think he does a lot of TV stuff. Oh, he was also in Looper.
He was in Looper?
Also in a movie called The Girl Next Door. This was a long time ago. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Is that with the porn store in Next Door?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my god.
He's one of the members. He's the member of the tripod that has to step up to the plate. I forgot.
Yeah. So I saw it with my dad, and my dad reminded me of that. He goes, oh yeah, he was in The Girl Next Door. I was like, with Emil Hirsch? He was like, yeah, he was the one that at the very end, like the jock was like, oh, I wish I was that dude. And he's the one that had to fill in for the guy that left. So he's like got this like weird film repertoire, right? And then for like, they're mostly like, I don't want to say comedy, but they're like weird, quirky movies, like except for like Little Miss Sunshine, which kind of was quirky in its own way. But then when I saw him and like I was like, oh, he did this perfectly. Like it was just really good. And then just I don't know. I felt like this Riddler was different, but I liked it. I liked it in a way where it was like it wasn't too intense, but it also was kind of like Riddler-esque when like he would laugh, right? And even when like Commissioner Gordon, he's not Commissioner Gordon yet, excuse me, when Gordon was like, oh, this guy's hilarious. And I was like, that's a joke, because he's like always laughing and his jokes are funny, but he's a maniac, right? So I thought that was really good.
I like that he was oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I like that this was a Riddler that feasibly could exist in real life.
Yeah, like absolutely.
Without taking too much away from the actual like Riddler as a comic book character. Like it was shocking how much it worked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like how
because
he,
yeah,
oh,
go
go
ahead, Whitney.
I was just saying, it's scary because, people like that do exist, And I feel like, he had like a strong like support system online. I mean, it was a comical scene with him being like, "Thank you guys. I love this community," and it was so silly. But it's actually very frightening because he genuinely believed these things. Like he thought he was doing the right thing. Like in his mind, he's like, "I am changing things for the better." And that's scary. I mean, a terrorist. So I
Yeah.
thought that was a very interesting take on the Riddler.
Yeah, I think it's also indicative of like Batman movies and villains. Is he started out, I don't want to say alone, but he started the movie doing his own thing, and then he latched onto the fact that these people were corrupt, which can relate to people, especially in Gotham, because they're all being, I don't want to say like exploited, but they're all like bottom of the barrel people who are like, we can't get by. And this guy comes along and it's like, oh, it's because your politicians are corrupt. It's because the people in your government are corrupt. Here's my solution. And they're like, great. And then that's why at the very end, they're sniping people, right? And like they're doing, because they're like, this is what we truly believe. But I feel like, with any sort of Batman movie, the villains sort of have to amass that, right? They have to amass their followers so that way they can fight the Batman, right? And especially with like the video games too, like you're fighting people's henchmen, right? Like you're fighting Penguin's henchmen, you're fighting the Joker's henchmen, and like throughout the whole game, it's not just like one person controlling all these people. You're fighting multiple villains, and so like the Penguin had his own, right? Like, and then Falcone had his own, and then so did the Riddler at the very end when Batman was trying to stop all of that. So I feel like that was really good. Do you Jefferson or Kenji, do you briefly want to talk about like Matt Reeves' directing in other movies as compared to Batman? I know there's been a couple of movies that I've seen, like you said, Cloverfield, which I was phenomenal movie. I loved that movie when I first saw it. Do you want to just mention any of the directorial comments about this movie?
You go first, Jefferson.
Didn't he also do? So he's like mostly done like horror movies.
Well, he also did the Planet of the Apes movies too. The recent.
Planet of the Apes, that's right. He did 2 Planet of the Apes movies, right? It was the first one and the second one.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, the ones with James Franco?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one had James Franco, and then did he come back in the second one? He did.
He dies in the second one. He dies
spoiler. No, I'm just kidding.
You get 2 spoilers tonight.
I know, spoiler from 2010.
Right, I forgot he did those. I think like not only did he knock it out of the park with directing a Batman movie, like he was not my first choice. Like I would never have thought to like have Matt Reeves do a neo-noir like detective mystery movie. Like this was up there with like Seven or Usual Suspects. And like, no, I would not pick Matt Reeves for that. I would pick like an actual person who's done like a noir movie, but no, he surprised me too. Like this was God, like the amount of time that people said like this movie kind of like didn't justify its 3 hours. I kind of disagree. Like I love the moments when he lingered on a shot. Yeah. We just had it just stopped at a shot with no interruption, no quippy one-liner. It just like let us have that moment, and it did. And it was like, yeah, no, I loved it. Like one that came to mind was at the very end when Selena and Bruce go their separate ways at the graveyard, and we get just a shot of Selena in the rearview mirror, and it's like it just has that moment. It just lingers there for a minute, but it's like it just worked for me for some reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were things about this film, and you're right. It was like I don't want to say typical, but it was like a modern detective, like you said, film noir movie where I wasn't expecting that, but it wasn't something that I hated. It was something that was like, I like those movies in general, like watching those movies on like TMC or like when it's on TV, but seeing it in like a modern perspective, it fit, right? And you're right. There were scenes that I was just like, okay, is Robert Pattinson gonna scream? It's taking too long. I'm a little uncomfortable, but I think it was those uncomfortable moments that made the film what it was, right? It's those moments where you're like, this is uncomfortable for me because imagine what imagine what it's like for or the Batman right now, right? Like, so and I feel like he did justice to that. And like I said, the film flowed. Like it didn't. There wasn't a moment where I was like, checking my watch, like I gotta go, right? The whole movie was just captivating, and there wasn't a moment where I was like, oh, I'm bored, right? I think that was a really good thing. Kenji, did you want to add anything?
I thought that there were parts where like a lot of people are thinking, does this really need to be a 3-hour long movie? And unfortunately, there are some, like you were starting to talk about the cinematography, and unfortunately, I'm like, in a way, it does have to be 3 hours long because the way that this is shot is just so beautifully done that you just need to kind of, it's so dense, and you have to drink it all in. He just has he has an amazing DP crew and stuff like that, like phenomenal. Directing. And I don't know if he wrote this or maybe this was a directorial choice, but there was the scene with the on the highway though was probably one of my biggest, maybe this was a directing choice, a writing choice, but the highway scene, I didn't know where it was. I didn't know where it took place in Gotham. Was it near the docks? Was it on the highway? Was it, like geographically, like I know that it's on a road, but where in Gotham is it? I just want a wide shot so I can see the city, so I know what the hell this is. But the other thing I also had a kind of an issue with was that there were a lot of moments where it just seemed like Batman kind of had a complete disregard for the human life. Like and that highway scene was a prime example of it because he's chasing the Penguin and he's going through all these crashes, which there's no way anybody survived from these things. He is now directly responsible for these people's deaths. And I think I was talking to Stephanie about it earlier. I think we have a clip of when Robert Pattinson just Dukes of Hazzards it over like these trucks that have just with people that have just truck drivers that have just died because of this car chase that Batman's gone through. Like,
but without those,
and with a strange donation from the Wayne Foundation to these families, that was like don't get me wrong, it looked awesome, but afterwards I was kind of going, Batman, you don't kill. You just killed a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So I think it's like the Arkham games where we're gonna see them. They didn't show it to us, but maybe they roll out of their driver's seat and it's like, wow, that was what happened. I don't know.
That was close.
Just for everybody on this and FYI, he was the writer and the director for the Batman.
Yeah.
So he did both.
All right.
Thanks, Steph, our producer, for telling me that. But yeah, so that's the other thing I wanted to talk about too. I loved how the movie evolved the relationship between Batman and the city, right? We open with people just absolutely hating Batman. He's abhorrent. Even the police treat him like shit. And the only person that, is decent to him is Gordon, right? And then obviously Alfred. But then as the movie progresses, right? And then when you reach the very end, I think he sort of just finds himself in a way where it's like, oh, like I'm going to help these people because it's necessary and it's the right thing to do. And then people want to be helped by him at the very end, right? And I thought that was I thought it was just a very good choice for this film because it started out dark. It started out scary. And I think for him, right, like, if it's year 2, people barely know who he is, right? They think he's just a guy in a mask, like going around, like not killing people, but like, stopping people that are also doing crime, but are also corrupt. And so people aren't really sure what to think. And so they hate him, right? Like he's a freak, which is, I think, it's very indicative of a Batman movie. So I kind of like how the film did that, how it just sort of evolved the relationships between the people. I know. I kind of agree. Oh, go ahead.
Can I add on to the Gotham City thing? Because this is my favorite depiction of Gotham City ever put on film. Even even a little more than Tim Burton, because with Tim Burton, it still had that almost like unnatural look to it. With this, like I like it at least more than also the Nolan movies, because I don't remember a single establishing shot in the Nolan movies that made Gotham look as dirty as it was. Here we get like a dozen, like homeless guy over here.
Yeah.
We got like there was an establishing shot in this movie that was just perfect. It was what was it? It was during the right before we get this POV GoPro shot of Bruce on his bike. There's just a homeless guy just digging through trash. And I just like it just really like cemented how much of a cesspool this whole city was to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I
agree.
No,
yeah,
like
I mean,
yeah. Sorry, I was gonna just say that Gotham smells like it looks. You know what I mean? Like this was like a very gross, very it looks. It seems like they really made Gotham look like a horrible place to raise your family.
Yeah. Smells like cocaine and cheap cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like that they really established Gotham City as like its own character.
Yeah.
In a way. It's like multifaceted, and I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, it definitely captured that like dark and gritty aesthetic that you think of when you see Gotham, not just like Chicago, you know, like it captured, you know,
I wanted to point that out. Like Nolan, Gotham City is just like, oh, this is just Chicago or
Chicago.
Yeah.
No, this had
Chicago, Georgia, and Los Angeles combined.
Yes. Well, it was funny because I was even watching like the subway scene at the beginning of the film when they're, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, even like here in LA when I'm riding public transportation on the metro, I'm like, this is how I feel. I'm like, don't make eye contact, just so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And Kenji, it's good that you brought up that point. Like they definitely made the city its own character. And I think, you know, I think the people that were in the city and like the way that it was depicted, it was a lot. I don't know. Like I said, this film was just real for me. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a real Batman movie. Like even the club for the elites was nasty, right? Like it was grungy. Like they were doing drops, like they were doing drugs and shit in there. And I was like, I wouldn't order a drink here. Like this is gross, right? Like, but the elite would come there, and I think it encapsulated like the whole feel for the city and the whole feel for the people. And the only time we ever saw something different was like even when the whole church scene, when they were going to go to the funeral, even that was dark and grungy, right? Like it was a church, but it was still like what's going on, right? And
have you all seen Blade Runner?
Yeah.
Yeah,
long time ago.
Okay, that I kind of got that city's vibes here too, like that with the night too. This grimy neon lit city.
Yeah, like cyberpunk 2077, where it's like like just where it's just like I don't want to live in this city. Like this city looks disgusting, and I love how it's modeled after LA, and I'm like, that's hilarious. But yeah, I definitely feel that the city was its own character. It's really great. Let's talk about the end, because I feel like it was a culmination of just everything that was adding up. And I liked the fact that at that moment when he got shot with the shotgun, and then he basically was like knocked out, like that was real Batman, right? Like he couldn't go on. And if Selena Kyle didn't like come in and like save the day, like he would have died. And we were all like, oh, well, something's going to happen, right? Something. And then he injected himself with what? Like adrenaline?
I think it was adrenaline, right?
That was Venom. Yeah. That was Cobra Venom.
It was Venom?
Cobra Venom from Bane. Or it's what Bane uses, but he somehow has it. We don't know how or why.
See, I'm so glad we have nerds on this thing, because I wouldn't have known what that was.
In the comic books, it's established that Venom is just a regular street drug that everyone uses. It just so happens that Bane figured out the best way to use it is to inject it into your brain. and it basically, and it was just this whole crazy thing. So yeah, but yeah, it was cool to see that. It's kind of gives hints at, did he already fight Bane, or is that Bane might be something that we might be seeing further down the road? Like
Sure.
it's cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so my selfish like wants, every time there's a Batman movie, and Whitney, maybe you can relate, but I always want Poison Ivy in there, period. Like,
yes.
like Uma Thurman, fine, whatever. It was what, but like I want a Poison Ivy that's like, I'm gonna kill people with these plants. Like, I want that movie.
Yeah.
Right? Because all these movies, go ahead, go.
It's gonna break your heart, but there was a Gotham City Sirens movie meant to come out.
Yes, that would have been so dope.
It should have.
Get on that.
Yeah.
They made.
Also, I want to see some Zatanna.
Yeah, I want her too, but Gotham City Sirens, that should have been the movie that came out, but instead we got Birds of Prey, which wasn't bad. It's just Anyways,
it was Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey.
Yeah, we got that instead of Gotham City Sirens. I don't know why, but sure.
Yeah. They were like, no, we'll just scratch that. We'll just throw in Margot Robbie and we'll be fine. I think, so like,
Margot Robbie makes us money. We're going to put her in the movie. We're going to make one of those movies.
Yeah, that's always my selfish need, is like some form of like, oh, they could be coming. But I kind of, and so also too, the one thing I wanted to mention is, even playing the games for me, like there were some references in there that were never referenced in any other Batman movie that was in like Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and then even a little bit of Arkham Knight, right? And so that, like when I watch it again, like but there were certain parts where I was just like, that wouldn't have been mentioned, I don't think, if the games hadn't come out, right? Like, because I don't.
Oh, with the Arkham and the Waynes.
Yes, yeah. So
that was awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So like
cool.
we get that in Arkham Asylum, where it's basically revolving around, like, you have to go find these like secret little like glyphs or like little things, and then it's like a history of like of the Arkhams and like how it was created. But then there's all this like supernatural stuff that happens, right? But yeah, I think the villains that they did for this movie were great. I obviously want Poison Ivy in there and just, here, kill. But yeah, that's always my selfish thing. So yeah, are there any final thoughts that we have about this movie? Any people that might be hesitant to maybe go see it? Any last tips of advice? Anything we can think of? I would say it is worth a go at the theater. I will say it was a good time. I had a good journey. My dad enjoyed it, and he doesn't like going to movies, and so he thought it was really good. Obviously, you can't relate it to all the other Batman movies because it's different, but I feel like it's worth a see in the big screen.
Absolutely. I definitely want to try and see it in the larger format screens, because I was still being cautious because of the global situation. So I guess pandemic, it was just called what it is, because the global situation is something completely else right now. But but because of the pandemic, I tried to find like a smaller showing, and like I got lucky. Like it was like, other than like the group that I was with, was like only 3 of us. Like I think there's like maybe 10 other people in the theater, so we got really lucky. But like, with that being said, there are a lot of shots I look at that I'm like, this would probably be really awesome on IMAX. So I definitely wanted to.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. I think that was me too. Like I took the day off. Actually, I saw it earlier today because I have the day off from work. I work at a school, so it's spring break, and I was like, oh, I'll take Monday off and kind of go see like a matinee, right, which is like at 12:30, and it was worth it. I mean, I went to a movie theater where you can get dinner and drinks and all that stuff, and it was just definitely worth it. So, do we have any last minute thoughts before I say?
Do you guys want to touch on the potential this has to be a really great? Can I cuss?
I've been.
I
haven't noticed. Yeah. I've been desensitized from all the cussing, I guess.
Just Jefferson, let's just keep it to about like a minute.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I think this has the potential to be one of the best, like, I think this has the potential to be like way better than the Nolan trilogy. Like going forward, if this a sequel comes out in the next 2 or 3 years, if it like just like keeps this pace that it has, like this momentum that it has, this tone that it has, I think that's potential. Like,
Mm.
I think looking at the Nolan trilogy through the lens that I have now, I don't know if they hold up as much personally. The trilogy as a whole, not like Dark Knight, of course, is still fucking amazing. It's just the trilogy doesn't hold up as much to me anymore.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it could be, and I think we have to look at it in its own lens and its own point of view, right, with this movie. But I do feel like if it gets even better, like there may be a possibility, right? Just throw Poison Ivy in there and it'll be fine.
Yes.
All right, y'all. Well, that's all the time that we have today to talk about The Batman. I'd like to say thank you all for tuning in. I'd like to give an amazing and a wonderful shout out to all my guests here. Jefferson, it was wonderful meeting you for the first time. Whitney, it was wonderful meeting you for the first time, but we've worked together and it's always great. Kenji, it's always good seeing you. It was good doing another review with you. Yes, and then Kenji, where can we find you on the socials?
You can find me on Instagram at Kenjinator. It's right there on you'll see my name on there for sure. You'll also find me on Twitch, which is the Kenjinator, which is exactly the same thing with the in front of it. Also on Sundays, I am part of the Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I do every Sunday from 3 p.m. I highly recommend you check it out. It's that channel is called KD in LA, like KDINLA, every Sunday at 3. It's a fun campaign. Check it out.
Awesome. Thank you. And Whitney, where can we find you on the socials?
Yeah, on Instagram, whimsicalwhitney_. And then on Twitter, at a loss, it's Whitney. And you'll see a lot of like themed baking and all kinds of fun, nerdy stuff and reviews. So come check it out.
Yay.
Like nerdy
And
nummies,
then-
like nerd food.
Oh yeah, like I do a lot of themed baked
Nice.
like foods and treats and stuff. So if anyone ever wants anything, just ask me and I will gladly make something for you.
Oh yeah.
Sure. And then Jefferson, where can we find you?
I'm on every social media as Jeffersaurus. That's Instagram, Twitter. I don't post on TikTok as much anymore, but I'm there, and YouTube. And of course, like you can just find me in various skits in G4 TV, which is now free on Pluto TV if you have it.
Nice. Well, thank you all for letting us know where we can find you. Always remember that Nom Watch Review and Basic Binges are now in podcast form. So if you missed our live stream, don't worry. You can listen to it on the next day, whether it's on Google Podcasts, Breaker, Spotify, or where you get your podcasts. So make sure you subscribe and review our lovely shows. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, as well as here on Twitch. All of our platforms are at Nom Talk Network. I'd like to give, as always, a huge thank you and a huge hurrah to our wonderful producer, Stephanie. So yes, we love you, Steph. I know you're listening. We love you.
I know her.
Yeah. And make sure you tune into our next show, which is going to be tomorrow night. It's going to be Nom Watch Review, Tales from the Crypt. It's turning 50. So, we'll see how that goes. And so until then, I'm your host, Jordyn Orozco, and you all have a nomorific day. Bye, everyone.